Hello, I'm Joe Gardiner. I am the AVP for the Portworx business at Pure Storage for the EMEA and LATAM region. I think when we look at the challenges facing financial services organizations when it comes to integrating Gen AI, we have to look at the broader challenges that the industry is currently facing. And we're seeing a lot of disruption from smaller, more dynamic challenger banks that are attracting younger customers and taking away kind of future commercial business away from some of these older organizations. And I think Gen AI plays into that dynamic because the ability to bring a higher level of digital experience through the use of Gen AI to these consumers is naturally going to mitigate some of the risk of lost market share through these changes in the industry. But I think for that to be effective, of course, that point on integration is really key. And probably the most important thing to think about in relation to that is really data, because Gen AI to be impactful through the various digital channels that we see it being implemented, for example, chatbot or some kind of document handling system, it has to be trained effectively on accurate and meaningful data. And this opens up a whole load of challenges because to train those workloads, you need a platform that provides access to data, especially in the financial services space, in a private and secure way. And I think handling sensitive financial data introduces quite a lot of risk in these organizations because, Gen AI systems, like anything else in financial services, must comply with the same stringent regulations that the overall organization has to, like GDPR or the PCI DSS. So really the first thing I think that financial services organizations need to think about is how they can implement robust security measures to prevent data breaches or misuse through the Gen AI workloads that are being deployed. So that would be my first starting point, is take a look at the platform. Do you feel today that the access you're providing from that platform to the data set is being provided in a robust and secure way? Yeah, so when I think about the most relevant AI workloads today for financial services and how Gen AI can be part of enhancing these workloads, I've already talked a little bit about some digital channels and how chatbots and support bots can enhance the digital experience for consumer bank customers. And we see that already, like messaging services where you can ask for basic account activity to be completed, or you can upload a document and it gets approved more rapidly. And all of those kind of great digital experiences are possible because of Gen AI. But if we think about another kind of workload, I think if we look at either the broader organization or even in some cases in the investment bank, there are lots of opportunities. I think one thing that AI is extremely good at is detecting anomalies, because ultimately it's been trained on data. So it's really good at seeing changes in that data. And a great example actually is the healthcare industry, where we know that AI is being used to detect sort of cancers and scans, and it's doing that with a greater level of accuracy than doctors. But if we pivot back to financial services, I think an example of an anomaly in financial services would be a fraudulent transaction, and that's a real opportunity for the industry. We already know that there's a lot of investment in applications that monitor faster payments, for example, which is that commonly used way of transferring funds between bank accounts. And I certainly see an opportunity for AI to be used to predict risk and flag potentially fraudulent transactions to a higher level of accuracy. But there's also an element of providing a more robust experience to the consumer, not just through the examples that I've given you, but we could look at a much broader service such as financial planning, right? We know patterns in the market already today. We know the right areas to invest for the majority of consumers, and we see already robo investing into ISAs and various trackers and funds. And I think we could go a step further and use AI to analyze customer data to provide really sort of customized or tailored financial advice and even sort of make recommendations. Of course, that does open up a lot of regulatory and ethical questions, but I think this is really where I see other types of AI workloads bringing value to this industry. when we're looking at AI-driven services and how financial services organizations should be thinking about that in order to remain competitive, we've talked a bit about the sort of digital experience for consumer banks and also some of the opportunities to improve sort of the internal operations related to things like fraud detection. But I think the area that we haven't spoken about is really the investment bank. And I think there's a couple of things here that stand out for me. The first is that AI workloads, whether it's Gen AI or not, are really good at creating and managing data sets. And one example that I think stands out particularly for FSI is that AI can create really high quality data sets that also preserve privacy. And I think that's a key trend when it relates to financial data. But for financial institutions to really accelerate AI development, they need to be able to almost be independent from relying solely on sensitive customer data, because that's where you're going to start to hit regulatory or compliance issues. And I think with that increased reliance on AI, as these services develop and investment continues to happen, there is going to be a need for some kind of governance framework to address some of the sort of ethical concerns and transparency. And I don't know if that necessarily comes from government, but I do think that that's going to have to be something that's either decided on as an industry or comes from the vendors. And so then that changes the landscape, and staying competitive within this environment where data is being used to improve models while also preserving privacy, but you also have this regulatory requirement, you're going to have to sort of embed trust and accountability into the solutions that you're developing with AI or delivering as AI solutions. And that for me is going to be the competitive advantage, not so much the ability to create and deliver these services, but to do so with consumer and organizational trust.